Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to another video on the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be going through Pinterest designs and we're going to look at some inspiration and just kind of look at some things and just kind of get inspired. I think I already said that, but it's all right. I'll just say it again. I'm sorry I didn't upload a weekly favorites over the weekend. It's been a little bit crazy with the holidays and everything, so I'm trying to kind of get back on track, get back on schedule here, and give you something that you can find some inspiration in. So we're going to check that out today. Before we get started, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Okay, so I've done a couple of searches within the past week that's kind of outside the norm, so we may see a couple of things that aren't entirely relevant, but for the most part we should see some relevancy as we're going through everything here. So let's just go in and look for some posters. And one thing that visually is very interesting is this. So this is actually a very straightforward type of process and technique here. All you have to do is really just kind of start with your base image. There is an obvious effect that's going on here, and it is a halftone effect. So you could do something kind of like that, and then you just put this rectangle above your artwork and just set it to a different blending mode, something like overlay or maybe even color, depending on the lighting of what you're going to be doing. So this is actually really cool, very interesting. No words on it, at least that I can see. I don't think there's any words on it at all. Another thing to point out is the fact that it ends right here and then it just keeps going. The halftone effect keeps going, so that's very interesting. So this is kind of like a lesson in composition, is that you don't always have to follow what the user expects to see. So the rectangle itself is actually in a different spot than we would typically expect. It's not entirely covering up the subject of the photo, which is the woman here. I assume it's a woman, but it's not entirely covering up this person. So it's actually stopping at a certain point there, and it doesn't seem that it's following any type of a grid or any type of a system, although it could be, but it's hard to say. But it's just a really cool example that you can do something that's unexpected to the viewer. All right, let's go back to our home screen here and just see what we've got here. Before we even start scrolling, is there anything that really jumps out to me? Not really anything in particular in terms of what we're looking at for graphic design purposes. So let's go ahead and scroll down. This photo right here is really cool. Of course, it's just a photo. It's not a poster of any kind, but just really interesting composition there. It makes me wonder when I see photos like this if it was shot as a portrait or a landscape, because this looks like this could have easily been a landscape and then just cropped down to this. And I think it's very visually interesting how we've got those two figures right there. And it looks like they're jumping in maybe into like a frozen water or something like that, or it could just be the way that that splash happened. I really don't know, but it's just a really cool photo there. And you could easily take something like that or something maybe like this, where you have this really interesting composition of the figures that are in the photo, and you can make a really cool poster out of it. Check this out. Here's another, looks like it's the same one, but even more dramatic lighting. That is just super cool stuff right there. You could easily make a typographic poster out of that of some kind. This is interesting right here. I've seen things like this before, but I've never actually created something like this, but this would actually be fairly easy to create. It's just a simple technique of using the marquee selection tool, kind of moving some pieces around and then creating some of those shapes that will eventually turn into those straight pink lines right there. This is really cool. I'm probably going to save this to do something similar to it and come back to it later, because it would be cool to make something like that and kind of teach you how to do it. Here's another one. I wanted to not do too many designs like this in this particular video, because we've got like these layers and everything and these masks and these different overlays that are kind of obscuring the subject, which is what we covered a lot in the last Pinterest surfing session. But this is really interesting. In fact, I think that there is a filter in Photoshop that kind of does this automatically, although you have to do a little bit more manipulating here. But in my playing around, if I figure out how to do something like this, then I'll certainly let you know how to do it in a future video. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's see what else we've got here. I'm trying to look for just a nice array of things that can kind of get you some inspiration. We did something kind of like this vertical lines right here. Here's another interesting piece. And it's actually pretty easy to do something like this. You're just taking the photo itself and then just making some selections over it and then just inverting those colors in those selections. You could take this a couple of steps further and select it and make a new layer and then change the blending mode to where it's not entirely inverting those colors that are there, but it's actually doing something like difference. So you can do the difference of the pixels that are going on there. It's the difference in colors. And then you can also add in some color overlays to this to to make it even more visually interesting if you wanted to do like little spots of color. So for example, you could have this selection right here over the eye. You could Command J that or Control J that to make it a new layer. You can make the blending mode into difference, or you can do something a little bit different like subtract if you want to make it darker. And then you can add in a rectangle layer on top of that and make that a color. And then you can mask that rectangle to that layer where you actually made that blending mode change. I know that's a lot to hear instead of see, but maybe I'll do something like that in the future. I've actually thought about making videos where I just go in and just play in Photoshop without any particular goal, so that way you can see all these different techniques and all these different things that I go in and play around with on pretty much a daily basis. Here's a Swiss design poster that's very interesting. It has what appears to be these vertical green lines going on a white background, but if you look carefully, it's actually white lines on a green background. So we've got the green background extending all the way up here into this area, and then the white lines going in a downward direction right here. And this layering of the letters right here is very interesting. We've got the A in front of this white bar and the F behind this white bar and in front of this white bar. So we've got really cool depth going on here. Anytime that we see shapes kind of going in and out of different letters, that is really cool. I would probably have made this line kind of maybe go through this G a little bit to where it's kind of covering up on this section of the G, but that's really the only change that I would make to something like this. I could easily see creating a series out of this type of concept. It's just really cool. All right, let's see what else we've got here. Okay, we have something like this, which I have covered before. Let's let it load, and looks like it's not going to load. Maybe it's no longer available. There it is. Here we go. Okay, so let's open this up. So this is actually pretty simple. I've done this on my channel several times. So you just take the photo itself and then you create the text in Illustrator, and it actually looks like on closer inspection that the text right here is actually conforming to his face. So that's very interesting. That's a cool angle that I've never quite seen before with something like this. It looks like this would take a lot more time than simply laying out the text and then just laying it on top of it and having it masked to that image. We're actually dealing with some distortion here, and it's possible that they used a mesh tool, most likely in Illustrator, to conform to his actual face here, but this is really cool. So definitely try to do something like that. If you've never done any kind of typographic art, definitely check that out. It's some really cool stuff. I do really enjoy art that's like this, very up close and very abstract. And this close-up of this eye right here with this pink that's overlaying on it, it's very, very dramatic, and I just love that contrast that's going on there. This is very early 90s type of color and design. We saw a lot of stuff like this, even more exaggerated during that time period, and that's something that I do miss. I miss extremely exaggerated art and extremely exaggerated colors. I wish something like that would make a comeback. It would be so cool if it did. This is an interesting concept right here. Let's check this out. So this looks like an array of dots, and it looks like it's actually going in a particular direction, and this is actually pretty simple. So what you do is you create your array of dots going this way, and then you just kind of have it go offset in Illustrator. I'll actually probably do something like this and maybe even recreate this exact same thing, but you just have your array of dots going in two different directions right here, and then you just slightly rotate it. You have up here in the top right section where it was rotated on that particular anchor point, and then you copy both of them into Photoshop and then just overlap them onto each other and change the blending modes. So seeing something like this is really fun, especially when you figure out that creating it is a very simple process. So I'm going to save this to my weekly favorites, and we will cover this in a later video. All right, what else do we have here? Oh, this is cool. This tornado of nonsense right here. And looks like this possibly could have been hand drawn, but at the same time, with Photoshop or Illustrator, with the different kind of things that you could do with it, you probably could recreate this in Illustrator and then kind of give it some effects in Photoshop. Although I would say that it does actually look completely organically drawn by hand, but it's not always very easy to tell. But this is a very cool concept, and I do love that. You could easily adapt something like that for the Wizard of Oz, because you've got the concept of the tornado itself, but it's also filled with these two different colors, so it's kind of like a blending of the two worlds. That's very interesting. All right, let's see what else we got here. This is a Bauhaus type of layout, and it looks like it's kind of creating this abstract image of maybe a tree, maybe even a Christmas tree. There's no type here to give us any kind of context, but you don't always need type, you don't always need context. Sometimes the art itself communicates the message very clearly, and to me it looks like we've got a Christmas tree here because we've got these cool colors. The two large ones here are green. What's up here at the top kind of looks like a star that's topping the tree, but it's just a really cool concept, and it shows you how powerful it is to overlay shapes on top of each other and what that kind of thing can create. All right, I have a very busy day ahead of me, so I have time to look at one more design. So let's see what we have here. A lot of very interesting stuff. Here, let's take a look at this one. We haven't really done a lot of stuff that's really heavily focused on typography. So this right here is a very cool layout, and it's kind of what I refer to as modern Swiss design. So the type itself is a sans serif design that you would see in a Swiss design poster, but it's also covered up by these blurs, but it's very cleverly done to where you can still read it, at least for the most part. I may actually create a video based on something like this, but I would definitely make sure that all of it is legible. This would actually be a really cool shoegaze concert poster. Thank you for joining me on this Pinterest surfing session today. If there was anything that you wanted me to cover more in detail, let me know what those are down in the comments below. If this video was helpful to you, please give it a like and make sure you are subscribed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.